We got a crowd today.
What's up, everybody?
We got a nice group today.
Yes, we do. Finishing off with everybody here. To those of you who are watching this video, we'll be going into our core competencies 7 and 8. If you're watching us live, feel free to join in the chat. If you are watching us afterwards or from class, feel free to put your questions in the comments or in your homework. We are going to jump right into it because we have a lot of stuff to cover. So if you haven't already watched our core competency videos for core competencies 1 through 6, we invite you to do so, and we will include them in our description or comments. Jerome, if we can do that, that would be wonderful. And all right, we're going to get going. Dive right in.
Yes,
Molly?
so we're continuing communicating effectively, and we are on core competency number 7, evoking awareness.
Evokes awareness.
Evokes awareness.
Definition: facilitates client insight and learning by using tools and techniques such as powerful questioning, silence, metaphor, or analogy.
So quickly, what qualifies as client insight?
I might have a definition.
Of client insight?
I don't know. At the bottom of the core competencies. We definitely do for metaphor though, and the other things.
Can you put that back on the screen though, please?
Oh yeah. Insights is defined as new understandings or realizations that emerge during the coaching process, leading to personal growth. Ta-da! So that is what we're looking for. We're using tools such as powerful questioning, silence, metaphor, and analogy.
And I'd like to address one quick thing. I think actually the most important word here is facilitates, as opposed to any of the others, because as coaches, we are not leading, we are not directing, we are facilitating the growth that the client has. We're not taking them one place or another. So facilitation is really critical here as an ICF coach.
Love that. Okie dokie artichoke. Well, let's hop right into 701.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Considers client experience when deciding what might be most useful. Well, that's kind of like I feel like we covered a little bit of this in 6, but I'm going to hand it over to you guys. What do you think?
Well, you're not the client. The client is the client. And so therefore, when you ask questions, when you dive deeper, when you offer anything, which you rarely would offer anything unless you ask consent first, you have to remember that it is the client's experience that is the most important here, not yours. And so asking the client, would you like to do an exercise, but waiting to offer that until you've exhausted other things, such as what does that mean to you? But really, considering client experience is really more about what's happening for them, as opposed to, oh, you've been through this too, so therefore you think they should know this, you think they should do this. So that's my 2 cents or 25 cents.
So that's like making a distinction between the client experience happening now versus client experience, like what they happened to them in the past.
Yes, I agree. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's almost like friction and things like that. Like we want to consider the client experience, how they are experiencing things, in order to decide what will be most useful in the session.
And it's not us deciding. That's the key ingredient here. We are
considering,
right? Addendum is, it's all about the client and what the client deems important to that moment.
All right. Shall we move on?
I think we can. Already moving quickly. Love this. 702, challenges. This one might be a big one for us to discuss. Challenges the client as a way to evoke awareness or insight.
Go ahead. I thought you had something.
No.
Okay. So there's kind of a 2-part one in this one. Number one, environmentally, there's already a challenge for the client because this is probably the first conversation or the first conversation in a while where the client is going to have to do all their work and figure out their answers, become aware of, take ownership, and create action plans with their own ideas. And then from a more micro, if you want to speak, coach to client perspective, when the coach asks a question such as, how true is this for you, really? Or something along the lines that, I had an example and it kind of just floated away, but you guys get where I'm going with this one, right?
Yeah, quickly, I want to give you the ICF definition of challenges, which we have here, which is pretty cool. Challenges, which when we say challenges the client, is defined as thought-provoking interventions offered by the coach to disrupt the client's habitual patterns, assumptions, or narratives.
Mm-hmm.
So an example,
I was like, what does a challenge look like in a coaching session?
a client says, I don't think I'm going to be able to get this job because I don't have any experience. And so I might say, may I challenge you on that? And I might ask, what is it about this experience that feels different to you from the other experiences that you've had? Or what if they would consider you, how would you feel and what would you do next? Those kinds of things.
I think one thing to just look at when we're thinking about challenging is like red flags are like black and white thinking. Words like always, never, too much, too little. Like those are the things that we might want to like step in and challenge that thought process because they tend to be unrealistic or we're living in polarization when the world is a lot more gray. So those are good indications of moments to challenge.
Or when the client says, I've tried everything.
Yeah.
Normal conversations say, oh yeah, I've tried everything too. But then when you ask everything and they find out they've only done one or two things that they know how to do, that's where the challenge is.
So challenging them on their language, I would say, is part of this. Is when they use a word, go in a little bit on that word, make sure they are clear on what they mean by that word for them to potentially make a distinction or gain new awareness of the way they're using that word may not be appropriate and something else might be more appropriate. And that might change their whole way of thinking.
And words like never, always, maybe, perhaps, asking into those. They might not even notice that they're actually using those words. I want, I should, I like, I need, like where is their mood or attitude in the language that they're using?
Wonderful. I think we're moving at a good pace. 703, is that what we're on? Yeah. Ask questions about the client, such as their way of thinking, values, needs, wants, and beliefs. Kind of talked about that just now.
Yeah, I think we got that.
Go to 4.
As long as it's not judgmental, right? Why are you thinking that way? So just be careful, cautious, compassionate, right? Around how you ask. Like, what does rich mean to you? What does healthy mean to you?
And your
can't
tone.
just, and your tone. Yeah, tone is, well, yeah. We're not the tone police, but yes.
Curious, right? That's what we want to be. We're curious about those things. Yeah.
And
you're not asking questions for your edification, more or less. It's more allowing the client to become more aware of themselves. So I say this in classes all the time. Are you asking the question for the client? Or are you asking because you want to know about their day, about their family life, about their dog? Why do we need to know about their dog? Unless that's part of the session contract. I guess you don't necessarily need to ask that question now, do you?
No, but there is something to be connecting. Sometimes having connecting before you get together, before you're in a session or when the session's over, there's those opportunities to find connecting kinds of interaction. I have found that when that space is allowed, that I've gathered more details than sometimes I do in session that can be utilized in a different way. Perhaps, it's something that we keep in our kits for when we're working with a client in the future. i.e. a teenager. I worked with a teenager and we were talking a lot about music, a lot about basketball, a lot about different things. So that first session, he was in that space of just getting into comfort and connection with the process. So there's times for that, But in the midst of the session, we keep in alignment with what Sam's saying.
Okay.
All right, moving on to 7.04.
Ask questions that help the client explore beyond current thinking. I'm about to sneeze, sorry. So I tried to mute it too, and I couldn't. I hit the button and didn't mute. So anyways, carry on while I tackle this sneeze.
There are 2 ways to mute, and you failed both of them.
So I'd like to, I think I want to address this because we're going to get into competency 8, and in competency 8, you know, we find out what the client is going to do from here. And I think one of the things for 7.04 that also happens during competency 8 is when we ask a client what's their work to do between now and next time we meet, we can ask them, how will you feel once that is accomplished? How will you feel about your progress? How will you feel if you don't do it? Right? So it's around their current thinking is, I may or may not do what I say I'm going to do. But when we connect them and help them connect to what the result might be, then we're helping them explore beyond their current thinking. Sam?
Here's my question. For those clients that aren't the big thinkers, like I've gotten a few clients that aren't necessarily the thinker, but they're very much, auditory digital. What's an alternative style of question in lieu of how will they feel?
Yeah, what will the impact be of this activity? What will the impact be of this exercise? What will the impact be of your accomplishment? Is that what you're thinking, Sam?
Love that. Yeah.
Or even options. What are the options? We're thinking beyond this. Yeah.
All right, let's go to 7.05.
Invites the client to share more about their experience in the moment. Which moment are we talking about?
The present.
And I'm actually going to jump in on this one just because I'm mentoring and I'm constantly, so there is a common thing of people saying, tell me more, or can you share more about that? And I'm trying to work with my students to kind of veer away from that to say, would you like to share more about that? Because we don't want to tell our clients to do anything. And while it's not totally frowned upon, we just want to watch that shift of, are we telling them to tell us more? Or are we inviting, which is the language, to tell us more? They may not want to go there right now. So pause there and go.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. I just, for clarification, because as I read this, I can see how it could be confusing to a new coach. Invites the clients to share more about their experience in the moment. And it was one of the reasons I was like, well, what moment are we talking about? Are we talking about in the moment of in the coaching? Like, what are you experiencing right now as we are coaching? Or are we talking about when they are sharing an experience and I'm asking about how they felt in that moment?
It could be either, but we definitely are working in the today in this moment versus how we felt back in that moment, how today it's going to be maybe impactful, not impactful, what options. So I'm going to say in the moment that they're expressing it. So in this coaching session for the most part.
So yeah, and I think too that what's important here is that just especially for those new coaches, maybe a client does go to a past experience. So all you need to do is, would you like to share how that experience impacts what's happening for you right now?
Yeah.
Right. Bring them back right here, right now. And so, yes, this moment as in the coaching realm, right, where we are in space and time with each other around what they're sharing and what they want to happen next.
Okay.
7.06.
Notices what is working to enhance client progress.
I have one.
Yes.
There are some clients that do not respond to how does that feel in your body? Where do you feel that in your body? And so if you come up against that, you know, for me personally, I'm not going to push that. I'm going to take that as a signal and I'm going to start looking for things that they are responding to. Usually someone that is resisting or doesn't want to answer those questions or maybe just can't. There's another form of questioning that's more appropriate for them in that moment. And so just paying attention to that, I think, is really important.
It's funny because when I'm too in my head, I hate that question. But when I get into my when I start to feel and get it into my body, then I don't mind that question.
For
And
sure.
it goes back to what Sam was just saying, asking, well, how would we ask that for somebody who's got the auditory digital processing? But, you know, there's also, when I was first teaching one of the 101 classes, I learned from a student that they could not visualize. And I can't remember the diagnosis. But yeah, so it was a real eye opener for me, because oftentimes they'll say, you know, visualize, da, da, da. And so to really learn as we work with clients, the language that they're using, but also what are certain things that might get in the way of the work that we do together and what could enhance it. Ask the client. They're not just noticing what's working, but asking the client what's working, I think is really important.
I love that, because we actually know somebody that isn't capable of visualizing. When we say
Aphantasia. I know two people like that.
Say like visualize an apple in your head. They're like, no. I mean, I know what an apple looks like, but I can't know. So
I can't visualize it in my head.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I can see it in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, it's like road, exactly.
And there's
Right.
also,
And just, yeah, go ahead.
there's also a word, I can't think of it, you guys probably can, for people who have difficulty with identifying feelings. And that's, yeah, so that's really important to be aware of, and pivot when you need to, and assess when something is landing with the client and when it's not, and ask, like Misha said, ask them what is working, what isn't working.
I think the clinical
just
definition of that is feeling tasia.
No, that is not the word.
So
Go take a break, Anthony.
He's waiting for somebody to give him that permission.
The gathering that I'm noticing is to pay attention to your client, right? To notice the subtleties, the interaction, and don't be afraid to pivot if it's not working. It happens. I had a client, I pivoted 3 different times. Finally, the 3rd time of my pivot landed and it worked with him. It happens. Pivot. Don't. What's the word I'm looking for? Be steadfast in that moment.
Well, and I'm going to add to it anyways, Anthony. I want to say that the other piece of that is oftentimes coaches will not acknowledge the feelings in the room when there are feelings. So notice what is working to enhance client progress. Notice that tears just fell from their eyes, and take a moment and pause, and don't just brush over it. Say, hey, I noticed that you've got some emotion coming up. Would you like to talk about that?
I see tears.
I see tears, right? I'm noticing tears, right? Or I'm noticing you looking off in the distance. What's coming up for you? Any of that.
This
what's happening for you is what I like sometimes, is just what's happening for you right now. It's just such a gentle, like, I'm aware, I see what's happening. What else would you like to share, if anything?
Okay.
But the key, I think, importance is not to push them before they're ready, right? Be comfortable in that quiet, in that pause. Give them that space. They're going to look up when they're ready to move on to the next thing.
And that's why it says notice, not talk.
Which dovetails nicely into 7.07.
Adjust the coaching approach in response to the client's needs. I don't
I
think we
think
need to. Yeah.
No, we don't, but screw it.
We covered it, right?
I think to add on to this, a lot of new coaches, I believe, go into coaching sometimes feeling that they have their approach. This is the coaching approach I have, and it will work for you as a client if you join up with me. This is telling you otherwise, though, is that your approach needs to be flexible to the client's needs, not the reverse, where the client's needs are flexible to your approach.
Yes.
Flexible while also honoring the baseline of what coaching is, because they may feel like they need you to come in with advice, but then that is you operating outside of your scope. So being aware of what is an actual need and what just feels urgent in the moment because somebody in the room ain't feeling patient.
Okay, we're gonna jump on over because I'm really excited about the end of this, and we're running low on time. So 708 helps client identify factors that influence current and future patterns of behavior, thinking, or emotion?
Give them an assessment. I'm just kidding.
No. What does this look like? This looks like us helping the client discover themselves what is influencing their current behavior, right?
Yeah, so we're meeting with our clients usually more than once. We are meeting, let's say we've met with them 3, 4, 5 times, and they're speaking in the same target of what they want to bring into the coaching factors. As they start speaking, we start noticing and picking up things that they're replaying or saying again, or having experienced yet again. So those patterns, we help them see and share. I noticed that when we got together last week, you mentioned this and this showed up. This week you're mentioning that, and that is showing up. What do you think is drawing that attention, or something along those lines?
Yeah, I actually had a client that did something like that. No matter what we talked about for the first several weeks, they always brought up the words career finance in stereo without fail. Didn't notice it at first, but then he brought it up again. I'm like, so I noticed the words, no matter what we're talking about, the subject of discussion could be something other than that. And those words kept on coming up. Tapping into that made it go from a skin deep coaching session to like a mar of the bone deep session, because that was a factor. Those things and everything surrounding his interpretation of career and finance influenced everything: their behavior, their disposition, their attitudes, etc.
Wonderful. I'm excited for 710 and 711, just so you know. So that's why I'm like, I want us to get through these so we can get to those two.
All right, let's move on.
709 invites the client to generate ideas about how they can move forward and what they are willing or able to do. And I think Misha touched on this lightly. I'll throw it out there to you guys. Pretty straightforward.
It just reminds me of the Cartesian questions that we teach in 101. What would happen if you did this? What would happen if you didn't? What would happen if you didn't? Or what wouldn't happen if you did this? What wouldn't happen if you didn't? And so just supporting the opportunity not to brainstorm for them, but to ask them to look into, what ideas do they have, so that they can change it. And then maybe even asking, like, how committed are you to moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
What is getting in your way, and how badly do you want to change?
Yeah, the words willing and able to are very important, because our clients sometimes will want to do more than they are able to do, or willing to do more than they are able to do. And sometimes they are able to do more than they are willing to do. So we're not going to make that judgment. They are going to figure that out for themselves. But that might be some awareness or learning that comes to light during the coaching process.
When I'm coaching myself, that key ingredient for me is, what am I willing to commit to? And I'm really honorable with that process. So what am I really willing to commit to? And like with my workout, that commitment has been really a strong commitment, because I know that is an important piece. Whereas I'm going to tease Sam, getting a Slurpee is not high commitment on my side, because he wrote that to us.
But that's important. Yeah, it can be important though. I like a sweet treat on a Saturday or Sunday in the morning, and it's important.
And every night as well, in the form of sugar-free chocolate.
If a Slurpee's not your priority, then hey, you're lost.
That's okay. I agree. Yeah.
Dark chocolate, that'll be doing it.
All right, 710, finally getting to the good stuff. Supports the client in reframing perspectives. The reason I say this is the good stuff is because I think this is also the stuff that can take a client or coach off the rails. So that's why I wanted to get here, so that we can sort of discuss what that means and what that really looks like in a coaching session.
Well, notice it says supports the client in reframing perspectives, not reframes perspective for the client. So being curious and asking what another way to look at this situation might be. Not as if there's an immutable law of how they can reframe it, but just for them right now, based on everything that was brought up in this conversation and everything else they're going to say next. What is one way where you as the coach can remain curious for them to reframe that perspective if and when they want to? Because maybe they don't want to. There is that acknowledgement that has to be there that sometimes our clients will hold on to beliefs because it is serving them in some way. Doesn't mean you just keep them stuck. You can ask them, share with me how this is working for you in this moment. But
And in 102, what you're talking about, Sam, we have some exercises that you're going to learn on how to do that.
Are we good on 710? Yeah?
No, I just want to add something real quick.
Okay. No, we've got time. We have 4 minutes to get through 710.
Okay, I'll make sure I use all of them. No, I'm just kidding. So the other thing that just came to mind, I think this was something we did in 101, but let's say a client decides that they're just going to go on the rails to their boss and they're going to quit and they're going to walk out. And so we might ask the question, if you were your boss and one of your coworkers did that, how would you be impacted by those actions? So we're not judging their actions. It might be the right decision for them. It might not, but to allow them to reframe a perspective by giving them those options. And then there's also that tool of role playing, but we always encourage coaches not to play the client, that we can role play what other people are in their life. But that can also help support the client in reframing their perspective.
Mm-hmm. It's like there's in forgiveness, I think, and maybe that goes into 102 a lot. There's a lot in that realm of forgiveness that is about being able to put yourself into the perspectives of others. And that will often adjust and allow people to find forgiveness.
Understanding where your perspective ends and another person's begins.
Yeah. 7-Eleven?
7-Eleven.
Not the store. Okay.
Slurpees!
Shares observations, knowledge, and feelings without attachment that have the potential to create new insights for the client.
I have been waiting all live for this one.
Yeah.
I want to first start off by saying this is not free license to give advice. The difference between giving advice and what 7.11 is saying is in that word attachment. When we give that advice, we are attached to number one, the outcome, and number two, the client, the person you're talking to. Just think of anyone you've tried to give advice to. You want them to follow through on it. However, without attachment, that suggests a couple of things. Number one, you are open, curious, non-anxious, non-judgmental. And if something happens to come up, that is where, to Misha's earlier point, you asked for that permission. As you were sharing this, something came up. Do I have your permission to share it? If they say yes, you may share it without interpreting it for them. If they say no, don't push. It's like, no, but this has the potential to put, no. Because again, it has the potential to create new insights. But if they're prioritizing their own work and their own insight first, which far enough and deep enough into the coaching session they're going to go, then you don't need to be sharing any of that. So are you open? Are you non-anxious, non-judgmental? Or are you just waiting to play a game of quick draw with your insights and saying, see, I'm following 7-Eleven and no Slurpees for you in that case?
I think it even bears a repetition of what you're saying, because this is a direction many coaches think they're entitled to go with their own perspective and interpretation. So, Misha, how can you say it again, just a little differently?
Well, if I were to do the Cliff Notes, Spark Notes version of it, I don't know which one it is. It's as simple as this. In your presence as a coach, which is much more important than the questions you ask, are you open? Are you curious? Or are you sitting here and waiting? Hey, I just read this book, like what is it? 33 strategies of war, and I have this really cool strategy that I'd like to share with them here. I'm just going to wait. Are you open? That's an actual book. Very interesting book, by the way. But otherwise, are you open to them, or are you just waiting for your turn, so to speak?
I think Misha, I think Misha has something she wants to add.
Do I?
Yes, you do. If you
okay.
Yeah. No, okay. I was just saying there's time if you want to.
Okay.
I wanted to ask one quick question before we move on. Is there's the word, observations, knowledge, which, slippery slopes, sharing these things.
That's new, by the way.
Knowledge is a new word. Yes, one of the new ones. So shares observations, knowledge, and feelings without attachment that have the potential to create new insights for the client.
New word.
So we are only sharing those things with the understanding that we are doing it without attachment, and it will be creating insights for our client. What are feelings? How does a client share or a coach share their feelings in a session?
Well, it depends. Like sometimes, whether this is right or wrong, sometimes coaches will look at a client and say, that sounds really hard, or I'm so sorry, and the person's really excited about their divorce, or they're not excited about being pregnant, or whatever it is. So it's, we have to, when we share an observation, we do have to give a caveat that, I'm wondering if I could share an observation, and if this doesn't resonate for you, please know that I'm not attached either, right? Just noticing something. But the feelings, I think it's more like, if you're not going to label their tears, maybe they're tears of joy as opposed to tears of sadness. Maybe they say, maybe we look at them and notice that there's some tension. Well, I don't want to label it as tension. I want to say, I notice your shoulders went up by your neck. Are you okay? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that, but don't get a stiff neck. But anyway, I don't know if that answered your question.
As a coach, would sharing something like I'm feeling tension as you're sharing?
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that.
This is why I'm asking, right?
I would reframe it as, I'm wondering if I can share something I'm noticing with you. Get the confirmation first, the consent first. As you're talking, I'm noticing, and then I usually use some sort of analogy. Like, I don't actually label it. I describe what I'm sensing. And then I ask, how does that land with you? Or what are your thoughts on that? How does that feel in hearing me say that? Like, I create some way to enroll them in whatever just happened for me. And it's completely up to them whether it lands or not. And I have no attachment to it at all. It's fine if I'm wrong. I even sometimes say, I could be wrong, but, and then share whatever it is. How do we feel about that, team?
Yeah, no, I think, as I'm thinking about it, I noticed that I've had clients where they're really angry, but they're not saying they're really angry. They don't have permission to be angry in their life or in the world. So there have been times where I would say, I'm noticing a different kind of energy from you than the words that you're using. And I don't know if you're noticing that and want to share that, or if you would be open for me to share what I'm sensing, which may not at all be your truth.
That's a good one.
In which case I would say, the client will say, well, I'm definitely not happy. I'm like, yeah, I noticed the sadness. You mentioned you were sad. I'm wondering if there might be some anger in there. And then they get to decide, is there some anger in there or not? Typically there is.
We're going to have to move on. I'm going to share just a little tidbit because I feel like we're beating around the bush as best we can. I think there is times where you, the coach, can actually say what you are feeling in the session. I'm feeling this way, hearing what you're saying, and you can still share that without attachment, as a way to create insight. That, like Brooke said, that could be a whole topic for a live.
I think
that'll be a very good topic.
It's not gonna. I don't want to suggest that gets used often, though.
Yes.
It depends on your what type of coach are you and your relationship with the client. Yeah, because
and
it doesn't work for me.
Of the relationship.
That's
Just
not
think
the
this
type
is
of coach I am. But
it's a little
it's
teaser
some
for
people.
future lives.
Yeah,
I think that's, and we're talking about someone who's a little bit more seasoned than like a new coach, that they can recognize those things.
All right, we're moving into competency number 8. We are going to actually be doing a whole bunch of stuff on competency 8. Competency 8 is before we get there, it's under I always say umbrella, but you call it something else.
Foundation,
cultivating learning and growth. So we've moved out of our communicates effectively and moving into cultivating learning and growth. This is so important that we are, it is one of those ones that if it's not in your session, can be very detrimental to you if you are submitting an evaluation. So this is an important part of our coaching.
It's also detrimental to your client. I mean,
yes,
we want coaching to be successful. And if we don't have competency 8, our clients are going to walk away feeling like, why am I even going week after week after week? What's going on?
So this is kind of the client's return on investment concept area. And everybody in any field wants a return on investment. So this is why it becomes a very important competency, because the client gets to see what they're walking away with.
All right. So now that we've teased it out, let's dive into it. Number 8, facilitates client growth. The definition is partners with the client to transform learning and insight into action. Promotes client autonomy in the coaching process. Do we have a definition of autonomy? I feel like they might have defined that for us.
That'll probably be the first one. Yes.
Yes. So they have defined autonomy for us. Autonomy, the client's ability to make independent decisions and take actions based on their own values and beliefs.
Just to add on, it's not enough to have a client who's got a lot of learning and insight. It's great. It's like the soil you work with, but it's got to go somewhere to promote growth.
So let's dive in. It normally explains itself once we get in there. So 801 works with the client to integrate new awareness, insight, or learning into their worldview and behaviors. This seems a little like hard to grasp. You know what I mean? For me. Yeah. So how do we make it tangible? And
I would say when you just look at the language in 8.01, it's pretty clear that this separates itself from a conversation with a friend. The new awareness that came in from the beginning of the coaching session, any insights, learning, that all just depends on what it is. In essence, we're asking the client what they got from this and how they plan to move forward. Because it's not a, hour, 30 minute, 45 minutes on just arbitrary philosophies that they've come up with, because they didn't get stuck because they didn't know something. Clearly, they've shown they know something. Do they know what the axiological expectation mismatch problem is? Probably not. But they do know what it feels like to go through something and have it not be the outcome that they want to. So with that awareness, I tried this, but it didn't work. At the end of the coaching session, you can ask, all right, based on what you now know doesn't work, because we talked about in the last session, what will you do now moving forward? How will you move moving forward? It simply takes the obscure into a concentrated direction of action.
I just find the choice of the word worldview, insight or learning into their worldview and behaviors. I understand that that we have the capability to adjust a client's worldview. And have it happen in a coaching session. It seems so big, and that's why I asked into that. Right, that seems like such a big ask. But I think that also means the client view, right? When we say that, this is how is this learning and insight and awareness going to affect their experience and their behaviors of and that
in the world.
Yeah, of the world. Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally,
like in their
well,
world, in the whole world.
Personally as well, I've worked with clients who worldview doesn't happen until it's integrated into their behavior. Yeah. It's still too conceptual. Mm-hmm. And they've told me like, oh, I'm at like a 7 out of 10 on how much I, feel confident. But once I start enacting this, once I start doing it, then that will go up. And then they tend to integrate that now into their worldview. because their awareness, insight, or learning has now been vetted by actual experience. And it is that actual experience and behavior that will show if that is worth anything.
So I think that Sam tapped into this earlier too with one of the statements he used. But for the people who are new coaches, one of the ways you can kind of know that you're doing this 8.01 is by asking, what did you learn about yourself today? Or what are your takeaways today? Based on what you learned about yourself, what do you want to do next? What kind of accountability do you need to implement that? So that's all, those are questions that can support you to identify. I'm helping them take what they learned in the session and integrate that new awareness so that they can move forward to the next steps of behavior changes.
8.02, shall we? I was about to ask a question that was going to take us into 8.02, so I held it by tongue and said, I'll just do this instead. Partners with the client to design goals, actions, and accountability. I'm going to read that differently. Accountability measures that integrate and expand new learning. So we're partnering with them to design goals, actions, and accountability measures that integrate and expand new learning.
What's your work between now and your next coaching session? How will you hold yourself accountable for it? And notice it says, again, partners with the client, not creates the goals and actions and accountability with the client. You are in the passenger's seat and they are in the driver's seat when it comes to that. Even if their action plan, as I've heard with a client before, is an intentional nothing. Partner with them in that one. And I see your reaction to that one, Brooke. I'm curious as to what that is.
It's my audio digital brain, because I'm one of those audio digital folks that I overanalyze and I look at the wordings and things, and they sometimes trip me up. So great, partners with client goals, actions, accountability measures that integrate and expand new learning. So I'm wondering, how do I ensure that those design goals, actions, and accountability measures are integrating and expanding new learning as a coach?
I think it goes back to 8.01 that they need to be something that influences behavior and action. Because once they do that, they can integrate and expand the learning and either figure out firsthand, is this actual real knowledge? Are these real insights that I'm having? Or are they kind of empty concepts? And when I put them out there, the learning is not expanding. Let's do something else now. Let's try another plan of action.
The learning is learning that it's not working.
Yeah. But it even goes back to 7-11, right? We're not going to just sit there and listen to them the whole time. We're asking them, if they've left a piece out. Oh, you mentioned this earlier. How will that be, or how will that fit into this process? What is that going to look like in combination with these other things? How is this feeling? Does this feel like a lot of things to accomplish, or is this a manageable 1 to 10? How manageable are these things that you listed? So we're asking them questions that help support their decision whether or not the actions are attainable.
Yeah, and the key word is partners, not directs. Don't direct your client to set goals.
That goes into the next. So 803 is a perfect dovetail for that, Jen. I love that. Thank you. Acknowledges and supports client autonomy in the design of goals, actions, methods, and accountability, right? So that's exactly what Jen just said. We are acknowledging and supporting our client in their autonomy. They're doing it themselves, not us.
Not, you should be doing this. That's not what we're doing.
And back to what Sam
all over
said,
your client.
Yeah, back to what Sam said about the client's goal could be to do nothing. The coach supports that by asking a little deeper into that and just making sure how the client feels going into that and how they're going to feel coming back into the next session. If that's truly what is best for them and there's purpose behind it, then the coach is on board with nothing.
I think also real quickly, I just want to say that sometimes acknowledging and supporting client autonomy in the design of goals, actions, and methods of accountability is also not rushing the answer Like if you ask them, what's your work to do between now and next time? And they're sitting there and they're thinking and they're thinking and they're thinking, you get to learn how to sit in that silence and just appreciate the timing they're taking for intentionality. So just to remember that you don't have to rush them to answer and therefore not giving them the answer. So yeah, I love what you all have said. Thanks.
And you also don't have to rush their pace either, right? We're not setting their pace. So we're not saying, what can you do in 2 weeks? We're asking them, what is the time period? What can be done in that time period? They're designing all of those goals and markers themselves. We aren't deciding that. So we're not rushing. And what we think can be done in 2 weeks might look very different for what your client thinks might be done in 2 weeks. So,
And on that note of rushing the pace, let's go on to 8.04.
supports the client in identifying potential results or learning from identified action steps. I love that. What does that sound like?
In the intentional nothing, what do you believe or what do you imagine will happen because of that? Since we brought that up twice now, that could be something. Instead of just taking them, and this is something that I actually got dinged for during my ACC performance evaluation. It still passed. I still got a good score, but the comment, and I never forgot it, was when the client says that this is what they're going to do, don't just take them at their word and end the session. Instead, get from them to the clarity and depth point that Misha even talked about in our mentoring. Shout out to you, Misha, on that one. What do you expect to come from that? And not in a judgmental way, like, what do you expect to come from that versus what do you believe will come from that? What results do you anticipate? What impact might that carry? How might you feel? How might you move? How might you insert verb here?
I like to think of it like scientific method, if then statements. Like, if this happens, then what will be achieved? What will happen? Like that. It's, for me, it's that simple. It's like an if and a then. And getting the client to identify, oh, if I do this, then I will X, Y, and Z, whatever that is. So yeah. All right. Next one, shall we? 805. Invites the client to consider how to move forward, including resources, support, and potential barriers.
So I imagine this can happen in every session, but I think this happens a lot at the end of a coaching relationship as well. Now that we've concluded this relationship, what are you going to do afterwards? How are you going to move forward? What things that are outside the purview of coaching are you going to do or pursue to help keep or maintain or accelerate your goals? That can happen at the end of the session as well.
And how will you track that it's working? You know, we've been working together for 6 months and this is great. You're taking your next step. How will you keep track of your progress, since you won't be coming to sessions every week or every other week? Right. But it's also inviting the client to consider how to move forward. It's a reminder that they are resourceful. They don't need to rely on us, because we weren't giving them all those ideas anyways. Right, coaches? Yeah. So just really making sure that we ask them, if you get into this bind, what resources do you have to get out of that bind? Right? If it's not a coach, they might say it's my therapist or it's my neighbor or it's my spouse or whatever it is. But
it's,
you know, and that's an important Google. Yeah, it could be ChatGPT or Claude, right? But the thing is, I think a lot of, I do want to say this, and it's not with judgment, but there are a lot of coaches, when it's the end of the relationship, they kind of end it like, okay, great, take care, good luck. But competency 8 has to do with the session and the whole coaching contract, right? You've decided, okay, you've got a month left, kind of check in with your clients. How's everything going? What's the impact of this? Are you looking at renewing? And they might say no. Okay, you still use those last sessions the way you've been using them to support them, so that they can then go and do what they want to do on their own.
Successful. Yeah. I love that.
All right. Next one, 8.06.
Partners with a client to summarize learning and insight within or between sessions. We talked about that a little bit, right? Like, that's that moment of like, how's it been? How you doing? How's it going? How did it do? Where are we at?
Yeah, I think also sorry, I jumped in. Jen, go ahead.
Hi.
I was just going to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this sounds like it is up to each individual coach how they want to execute on this, right? So one of the things that I do, I don't expect every coach to do it, but I do like to provide a summary of the session the next day. That is something that I currently provide. Down the road, might that change? Yes, of course. But right now that works for my business. But there's other ways of doing that. So that's what I'm assuming this is it's based on coaches, how they want to do it. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
it's a combination. It's a combination. I mean, when I look at this, I also think it's just asking the client, what are your takeaways from today, right? This is a simple question, but then you could go further by asking them, is that something you would like to document? And how would you like to document that? Because sometimes they want to write it down, but I'm not going to tell them to write it down, right? So summarizing can be, okay, yeah, here's the session summary that you sent. This is what we talked about. This is what your action items are. But to be honest, if my client didn't ask me to do that, and I feel like I'm holding their hand, and I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong, Jen, just that sometimes for me personally, I want them to get to a place where they don't need me to do that. That's why I don't even take notes in my sessions anymore. I'll write down the goal for the session, and then I'll write down their accountability so that when we see each other next week, I'd say, hey, how'd it go when you said you were going to talk to the guy whose dog is pooping on your yard? How'd that conversation go? And that's why I write it down, just so I can remember that one thing. But I think also with the summarizing learning and insight, within or between sessions, I don't do it between sessions. And again, you're right. It's absolutely up to every single client, our coach and client relationship. But I think it needs to be clear, like in your contract, this is what I offer as part of my coaching contract. I will send you an after session summary. If you don't want or need that, please let me know. Right. And they're going to sign on the dotted line. This is the contract that I have with you.
I think Jen uses AI summaries, so it makes it easier for her to do that. We have to keep moving forward, guys.
Sometimes I'll just put it that way. Sometimes I like my summaries better.
So this one's entirely new as well. We're going to 8.07.
Can Lisa just say something?
Yeah. Sure.
I just want to say, keep it simple. Where we're going with it is a lot of options, but really we are doing that. Every session that we're with our clients, we are bridging the gap between where they were and where they are. And what is important in this session may not be anything we ever talked about in our prior session. Okay, that's it.
All right, 807, partners with the client to integrate learning and sustain progress throughout the coaching engagement. We have nothing to say about this.
This is new, so we're all taking it in. We're shocked.
Brand new, this newly added. So partners with the client to integrate learning and sustain progress throughout the coaching engagement.
I think it's the same answer.
It's more or less the same. Okay,
sustain progress is I think
interesting choice.
I think it is important. It is a measuring. I mean, that's a measurement to me. When I see sustain progress throughout the coaching engagement, we are making sure our client is sustaining progress, right? We're partnering to make sure that they are progressing and sustaining progress and not losing progress
or backstepping.
And not making the decision for them whether progress is happening or not. Because there's been a few times I'm like, doesn't feel like we're going anywhere. And I will ask, so tell me what you think, how the progress is going, or something like that. And they all go and give me this big story about how progress is happening. And I'm like, gobsmacked, because I was thinking we were stalling. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm going to actually respectfully push back on the moving back.
I know I triggered you with that. I saw that.
Because steps backwards do happen well, here's the thing. The conversations in and of themselves are forward trajectory. It's already in a forward trajectory. It's like being on a train. Whether you go to the front of the train, the back of the train, or you just sit your butt down in the seat, you're still moving in one direction because the awareness, core competency number 7, is already being evoked. Whether they do something with it at the end of each individual session, or they choose not to, or something outside of the coaching session happens that causes them to move backwards, they're still here. They're still showing up. Sometimes the only visible marker of them moving forward is the fact that they showed up. So to coaches listening to this, if they move backwards, don't panic. Don't put a judgment and say, oh, my coaching's not working. you're probably fine. It's probably all well and good.
I mean, making an uphill climb can look like this, right? Like we're still going uphill, but we're doing this.
I just also want to say that sustained progress throughout the coaching agreement. So I want to give a little example. I had a client who, when I asked her on a scale of 1 to 10 where she was with joy, and she said a 4, and I did not say, oh no. I asked her, what does a 4 mean? And she said a 4 means that I've really come through a lot of hard things, and I'm really proud of myself that I am where I am. And I said, and by the end of our coaching together, which was going to be 8 months, where do you want to be? And she said, well, I think a 7. And so I asked her what a 7 was. I didn't decide why a 7. Wouldn't anybody want to be a 10? But I asked her the same question. What does a 7 mean to you? She says a 10 means I'd be enlightened, and I don't think I'm going to get there in this lifetime. A 9 means that I'm going to have some things that I know things are going to get in the way, so I can't reach that. I could maybe go to an 8, but I think 7, I just feel super proud and happy that I'm able to address and feel the joy that I'm looking for. And so as we progressed in the coaching relationship every month, I would ask her, where are you on your scale of 1 to 10? So that's helping sustain progress, right? That's helping her identify where's her learning, what is coming for her, and then moving into, oh, you know what? I'm feeling like a 6, or so whatever it is. But that's part of the sustaining, is that the you decide with your client how often you're going to check in around that. But the overarching coaching engagement, it's, checking back in with the original goal. The other thing I want to say real quickly, because I know we only have 3 minutes left.
2 more in 3 minutes.
I know, is that the goals can change. Maybe someone comes in to work with you on getting a job, and while they're working with you, they got the job. So now it's about identifying, is coaching still something they need? And is there something else they need? And now reintegrating competency 3, we make a new agreement to what is the goal for this time we have left together. And now you work on that.
I think that's moving into 808 and 809. I really do feel, though, like we've talked about this progress and everything. Part of me feels like that is also there to remind us as coaches that we are coaching ourselves out of a job at the end of the day, right? That is why it's there. Our clients are supposed to be learning and gaining progress and succeeding. And we want to make sure that happens. We don't want to hold our client and make them reliant upon us and codependent on us. And I feel like that is a lot of what that is about.
And this language changed. It used to say acknowledges and celebrates. It doesn't say celebrates anymore, because people got very confused around cheerleading, woohoo, and complimenting. So acknowledges, not you can celebrate in different ways, but that's not what it says. It says acknowledges.
And we've definitely done an entire live on this as well. So if you want to look that up, you can, but acknowledges the client's progress and successes. So we talked, it's not cheerleading. It is not, yeah, woo, great job.
I can't throw them a party.
No.
Okay.
But we do acknowledge them. Like, we're not going to also ignore their progress and successes, right? We're going to say, how did achieving that make you feel? That is where we're at. We're letting them find the feelings and emotions around their progress and successes, and that's where that acknowledgement comes out. Yes? No? Oh no, why are we getting Jeopardy theme?
Yeah, what?
Because we have 1 more minute left.
1 minute left. We're going to go into 809. Partners with the client to close the session.
Is there anything about this topic that you feel we haven't covered and needs to be covered? And don't do that with 3 minutes remaining. Okay, so 10 minutes in, you're doing the what are your takeaways?
Thank you and good night.
Yeah, but if you haven't asked that question, then you're really actually not partnering with them to close the session, as far as I'm concerned. But other people may have different opinions.
So one more time, what was that? What was that question, Misha? And then Sam.
So is there anything? So Brooke, as we've been talking and we're wrapping up the session, is there anything about what we've discussed today that feels missed or left out? And typically people say no. But you don't want to ask that question with only a minute or 3 minutes remaining, because they might say yes. And then what do? Because you're not going to dictate what you cover next week.
Sam?
And I typically ask, what else needs to be addressed so the session feels complete. And then that's it.
And I frame it as
Bravo.
what's left for you on this topic for today, if anything, because they could be done.
And now I will partner with all of you to close our ICF new 2025 core competency videos. For everybody watching the lives and
I was hoping
we're
you did
about to
that.
take 102. We look forward to having you in class with us, learning how this all fits into your coaching sessions. And if you haven't taken coaching 101 and 102 with us, join us as well. And you can integrate all these into your new coaching practice. And with that, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. And we will see you guys next week with an all new CLCI Live on a new
Scary
range of topics.
101.
Oh, scary 101.
Oh, all right. Great job, everybody. Bye,
Bye.
coaches and
See ya.
students and
See ya.
everybody.